bias and recognizing it, but also knowing what to do and how to challenge it when we see bias happening, either in the workplace or in our businesses or in society whenever we come across it. So very, very excited for this topic today. So just a brief introduction for those of you who don't know us yet. Some of you know us very well, I know, but for some of you, you're new. So I'm Sarah. I am an ex-English teacher. I was a teacher for 18 years before transitioning into coaching. And I now coach as a transformation coach. I work predominantly with women in their careers and businesses on vision and purpose, confidence, and well-being. And Rebecca's bio is very, very similar to mine. So Rebecca also transitioned from the classroom and qualified as a coach and is now a transformation coach, an NLP practitioner, DISC practitioner, and a coach trainer. So we both have a very, very similar background and bio. And Rebecca also came out of the classroom. Rebecca's based in Kent, for those of you who don't know her, and she's mum to one lovely little girl called Sophia. And we came together. The Coaching Catalyst is actually approaching its first birthday. We came together during the pandemic, initially to support the teaching community because we're both ex-teachers. And then with time, we were like, actually, we want to bring both of our existing businesses together to support women, either in businesses or in careers, to live lives of fun, flexibility, and freedom. So that is our mission, and that's what we do. But today, it's not all about us. The material that we're bringing you today has been curated and has been produced by International Women's Day in conjunction with the Lean In organisation. They've worked in collaboration today to work on this theme of breaking the bias on International Women's Day. So the content that we're bringing you today is not Catalyst content. We're just the facilitators today. It's been produced and distributed by Lean In and International Women's Day. And I'm really excited to share it with you because the quality of the content that they have produced is, I think, really, really high standard. And as Rebecca and I have been preparing for today, we have been learning so much just in that process of preparation. So we hope that you learn something new today, and I'm sure that we equally will learn something new from you today as well. So what does it mean then to break the bias, and how do we get started? That's what we're going to be looking at today. Okay, Rebecca, are you ready for me to hand over to you? You okay?
I think all the tech is done, but we will see. As Sarah has said, we don't proclaim to know everything about breaking the bias and microaggressions and different types of biases. We're here learning with you, along with you. We're all on this journey together. And I always say to people, just do the work. You know, if you want to know if you want to know the answers, you want to be more informed, just do the work. So we're here to do the work together. So our outcomes today, we together will be able to identify and challenge bias in society. That's really key, to recognise it, but also to challenge it. And last year's International Women's Day topic was actually choose to challenge as well. So it's really lovely to see that that theme is recurring today. We're going to engage in discussion because it's not all about us as facilitators, it's about you guys too as participants. We're going to engage in discussions with you about what to do and actually why it matters to stand up, why it matters to challenge biases. And then we are all going to commit to an action because that's really important to Sarah and I. It's not just about the learning, it's about the doing. So if you are here as an individual to help you with your business, if you're here as an individual to help you in your career, in your profession, if you're here as an organisation, we really, really are looking forward to engaging with you in the breakout sessions later. So the next important thing is our group agreement, Sarah, right? Because it's really important that we are all on the same page.
That's right. Okay, so we're tackling today, I guess it's subject matter that we don't talk about enough, that maybe is kind of new ground or new territory for us, maybe biases that maybe there's a bit of a taboo around. And so we're going to be having conversations today, and we might hear things today, we might hear situations or anecdotes today that are difficult for us to hear. So we're just going to all come today with a beginner's mind, with an open mind, free from judgment. Any stories that we share, particularly we might be sharing our experiences in the workplace or our experiences in business, we're going to keep those stories anonymous so that we're not kind of pointing out or calling out individual people. We're just going to talk about our experiences, but in a safe and anonymous way. And when we're talking about difficult subject matter, often we can be a little bit clumsy or a little bit uncomfortable in the language that we use. And so we're just going to understand today that we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're all coming from our best selves, from the best place that we can. And sometimes we're thinking, you know, especially when we're talking about bias, am I using the right words? Is it okay to say that? We're just going to really create an atmosphere today of generosity so that we can have an open, respectful discussion and give people the benefit of the doubt. So what we're looking to create today is a brave and a safe space in which we can have some really fruitful and insightful discussions, I'm sure. Okay, Rebecca, over to you.
So we have a workbook, but I've just realised that the settings are a little bit different on this Zoom. So we'll make sure that we put that into the chat box for you. What we would love for you to do when you do manage to get that, or even if before you do, as I'm talking through different types of biases that can happen against women in the workplace, I'd love you to jot them down. You can see I'm a teacher, right? Because I'm doing that, right? As if you've got an exercise book in front of you. I'd love you to jot down the different types of biases. And as I am talking and going through this process with you, make a note next to the ones that call out to you the most, or make a note to the ones that you've identified in your experiences, or make a note of the ones that you didn't even know were biases and now you've learned a new and more informative way to identify them. So there are 6 different types of biases that are common against women in the workplace. And as Sarah and I were educating ourselves and learning a bit more about this, we were like, wow, probably most of these we identify not just in ourselves, but in our female colleagues, in the people that we work with, in our clients. So the first one I'm going to take you through is likability bias. If anyone knows what likability bias is, pop a Y in the chat if you're over on Zoom. If you're over on YouTube or Facebook, then you can use the comment section in there as well. I want to know if you've heard of this type of bias before, and I would love to know if you haven't. So likability bias can also be referred to as a likability penalty, right? The word penalty, we think, oh, what's that mean? And it's a bias that's rooted in age-old expectations. Now, we're going through a big teach today on all these 6 types of biases. I'm just going to mute somebody. Thank you very much. So we expect men to be assertive, right? And this is just not my information. It's just the judgments and it's the observations that have been made over years. We expect men to be assertive so that when they lead, it feels natural and we don't question it. We don't question when a man's in charge. And their behaviours fit societal norms and we carry on as normal. On the flip side of that, we expect women to be kind and communal, so that when women assert themselves, sometimes we can like them just a little bit less and we can respond to them unfavorably. If this is resonating, just let me know, because we need more female women at the top, more female leaders, more female managers. Women face a penalty, and that's where the word likability penalty comes from. We face a penalty for when we are assertive. Men don't face that penalty at all. Now, we're not here to slate men. That's not what this is about. Because just as women can be subjected to biases as well, men can too. But women are more likely to be labelled as intimidating, bossy, too aggressive. And sometimes when we put race in there, we can definitely be labelled as aggressive. I've been labelled as the angry Black woman several times for being assertive. We can't win. When women are agreeable and likable, society perceives them to be less competent, which is a shame. And it means that actually research shows that women get overlooked for promotions. They get overlooked for managerial positions because they are seen to be too likable, too agreeable. So that's the first one. And I'm going to look at the comments later. So if any of this is resonating, if anything comes up for you, definitely put that in there for me. And the second type of biases, the second one is performance bias. And again, if you've heard of this, pop a Y. If you haven't, pop an N in the chat. Performance bias is again based on deep-rooted, and we're not saying that these are correct, they're incorrect, but assumptions about women and men's abilities. You can see the man's on the pedestal here. We tend to underestimate women's performances and we overestimate men's. Now, sometimes I like to be underestimated because I can I can prove people wrong. It's a bit of a challenge for me. Doesn't mean it's right. Women have to accomplish more to demonstrate that they're just as good and competent as their male counterparts. And when women are looking to progress, they tend to be hired or contracted, and this is an interesting point, based on what they have already achieved. Whereas men are hired and contracted based on their potential, based on what they can offer. Now, we cannot predict the future, and a male could be hired and contracted and not succeed in that. But we have higher expectations and higher hopes and confidence for men than we do for women. And there is an assumption that the males already have those skills. Now, a research study has showed that when names were removed from CVs, females were selected 60% more than men, which is interesting. When their names were removed, when the names were put back on, that percentage decreased dramatically. So what we notice is when names or genders are identified, the requirements also for the roles are shifted. So if a name has been identified and it's female, the requirements will be a little bit less. If the name is male, the requirements will be a bit more. That might be in our favor sometimes. Applications suit the experiences of male applicants. And this is all research. We're not saying that any of this is factual. This is based on studies, and there are several studies to show this. So performance bias reveals that women are more likely to miss opportunities, which can impact on their career progression. And now I'm going to go to maternal bias, and I'm sure that this one's probably the most obvious for some people. Maternal bias. Gosh, Sarah and I, did we face this, Sarah?
Oh, yes.
Maternal bias. And I've got one child, Sarah's got three, so she went through it 3 times.
Yeah.
Motherhood triggers false assumptions that we as women are less committed to our career and we're even less competent. I can tell you there's a lot of skills that comes in motherhood that can be utilized in career and in personal lives. So the assumptions can intensify the performance bias that women already face. Women are given less opportunity, they're held to higher standards than men, than fathers. And people assume as well that a woman doesn't want to be challenged after they enter motherhood. And therefore we get discounted when challenging projects or tasks arise. We get kind of just sidelined a bit. She's too busy. She's got enough on her plate. Maternal bias is actually one of the strongest biases of all of these. People are more likely to penalise women for small mistakes and oversights due to the assumption that their status has impacted their work and their performance. So being a mother has impacted on the quality of our work, so we become more penalised for those small mistakes. And the interesting thing about this type of bias is that it starts way before we actually have children. Can you believe that we're penalised before we've even considered having children? Because the conception there is that we're female, the likelihood is that we're going to have children eventually when we become engaged or we move in with our significant other or when we get married, for example. The bias starts from that moment. Research has shown that people who are in committed relationships, they also get sidelined earlier, way before they've even had children. And again, we're not here to slate men. We love men. Men receive some bias too. So when they take time off for family reasons, they receive less in performance reviews. They receive reductions in their earnings. So this one's a really interesting one because it starts way before we've even committed to, entering into motherhood or fatherhood. The next one is attribution bias. And this is really closely linked to performance bias. We see women as less competent as men, which I've already repeated for a few times. And when I say we, I'm talking about societal conditioning, right? Not we. We tend to give women less credit for their accomplishments and blame them more for the mistakes. And this is why it tends to be hard for us women to acknowledge our own accomplishments and why we are so easily able to doubt ourselves, able to kind of shoot ourselves, because we don't actually receive that as much as men. Men get complimented quite a lot. And you'd be really surprised to hear that because the expectation is that, well, a woman should be able to do that. There's a contradiction there, right? Because we're seen as less competent, but we're also seen as we should be able to handle that. And if a man does something a bit different to a female, then it's seen as, let's give them a pat on the back. Let's make sure that they're happy and they're celebrated. So even when men and women work on a project together, women's contributions are seen as less important. They're more likely to be spoken over in meetings and conversations than men. And a study has shown that men interrupted women in this particular study 3 times more than they interrupted other men. And the interesting thing here is that women interrupted other women. Oh, but they rarely interrupted men in conversations and meetings. I'm probably one that would probably interrupt the men probably more than the women, but that's just me. So as a result of this particular bias, we see that women can become less confident than men if they're being spoken over, if their accomplishments are not recognized. And women can tend to underpredict or underestimate their success, can be quite modest about it, whilst men can overpredict or overestimate their success. And the interesting thing here, and I work with quite a few male clients, so I find this quite interesting because it's not the case for the clients that I work with. But women often hold back from promotions based on these studies, and they think that they're less ready for the promotions, whereas men apply for jobs or promotions when they probably only meet about 60% of the criteria. As women, we tend to wait till we meet all the shortlisting criterias and we make sure that we're actually ready. We need to make 100%. And it's not always the confidence that holds women back. We can often sometimes, again, hold women to a higher esteem than men, which means that for some women, they can feel that the bar is higher for them. So that's attribution bias. We're getting there, guys. I hope you're still with me. I can see notes flashing up on my chat. So let's see, let's go into that. Oh gosh, there's quite a lot for me to read. Right, I'll come back to you guys. I can see Sarah's there interacting. So affinity bias. It's exactly what it sounds like. We gravitate towards the people who are like ourselves. Now, this is fantastic because if we have a female leader, a female manager, and they're gravitating towards people like themselves, and the females have more opportunities. But that's not the case because in society, we know that there are more male leaders, more male managers, more male CEOs. And so if people are gravitating towards people like themselves, then it means that the males will tend to employ more males, more people like themselves. And when I say like ourselves, it doesn't have to just be gender. It can be in appearance. It can be in beliefs. So I know that Sarah and I attract a lot of people with similar beliefs, with similar values to us, similar career backgrounds, because we tend to feel safe and connected with people who are like us. But whoa, wait a minute, because if someone comes along and they are not like us, we start to feel a bit uneasy, a bit intimidated by that. So in professional environments, leaders gravitate towards the people who are like themselves, as I've said. But if you have a dissimilar trait or dissimilar behavior, they tend to not want to be affiliated with you. Now, this type of bias has a profoundly negative impact on women, because I said there's more men at the top, and more people of color. Because if you think about the people at the top, they tend to be white leaders, white male leaders. So we're outnumbered in terms of those of color and females as well at the top. So we often get overlooked when it comes to promotions or career development. It's about making sure that we have an inclusive panel at the top, and that the person at the top is not just led by one person, led by a collective of people with varying different backgrounds. And this is my absolute last one for this session. And it's intersectionality. And it's something that Sarah and I spoke about quite a lot last year. And it will take me probably a really long time to go into it a bit more in depth. So I'll do it in a really basic way. You can see with the image here that you've got various crossroads, various sections of our personality, of our being. And we can experience biases based on one or more than one of these different types of us. We can experience biases based on race on our sexual orientation, disabilities, other parts of our identity. So intersectionality is simply just a metaphor to understand certain types of biases. I break it down into like sections or elements of our identity and how this can impact us. So imagine being a person of color, LGBTQ, a female with a neurodifference such as ASD or dyslexia. It's a lot more challenging than just being a female or a female of color. Adding more than one aspect of the identity can really impact on a person's confidence and a person's self-esteem, on how they're perceived in society. Or let's go for being Black, being Muslim, being an immigrant. Oh, let's just chuck being female in there as well, just for the fun of it. So research shows that people with 3 or more minority identities can really feel like they don't belong, really feel that they've got a real challenge, a real big wall to climb. And again, men can also be held back based on their intersexual bias. Being a male, Muslim, LGBTQ with neurodiversity. Gosh, there's a lot there. So I'm hoping that these 6 have given you an insight. And this was what Sarah and I really wanted to walk away with today, making sure that you had an insight into the common types of biases that are against women at work, so that we can make a start. It's about making a start today. It's not about knowing everything. So I'm going to pass over to Sarah to go through microaggressions, and then we're going to go into a little icebreaker challenge straight after that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Wow, you've given us so much to think about and so much to go away and if you haven't absorbed everything that Rebecca's just said, that's okay, because it's just like an introduction for us today. You know, it might be that we've kind of added a little bit more to our knowledge base, and this is, you know, something that we can continue to learn and explore as we continue to educate ourselves, because obviously it's a continuous process. So wonderful, thank you. And thank you so much for your really interesting comments in the chat as well. You've really brought a lot to the discussion by what you've said in the chat there as well. So really enriched the discussion. Thank you. So we're going to move now to very briefly looking at microaggressions. So what do we mean when we talk about microaggressions? Again, I think for me, this is probably a term that I'd heard, but I hadn't really known how to sort of explain what it was or to make sense of what it was. So one way of defining microaggressions is that they are comments and actions that demean or dismiss somebody based on their gender, on their race, or other aspects of their identity. So these might be comments or actions that occur in society, in the workplace, that can often go unnoticed and unchallenged because they seem, exactly as the word suggests, they seem to be micro, they seem to be so small as to almost be insignificant. But actually, when they are there and they're repeated over time, obviously that has a huge impact. Now, some groups of women experience microaggressions even more than everybody else. Black women particularly are 2.5 times more likely than white women to hear somebody express surprise over their language skills or their other abilities. Another example is that lesbian and bisexual women and with women with disabilities are far more likely than other women to hear demeaning remarks about themselves or others like them. So that's all that we're going to say for now on microaggressions, but just really to raise our awareness so that when we see those small actions and we hear maybe those small comments that may seem insignificant if they're seen once or seen in isolation, but actually to start to notice those and start to challenge them and call them out when we see them, which of course takes bravery. And we're going to talk more about that kind of brave action in a few minutes. So we're going to move now into a little icebreaker quiz, and this is interactive, and I'm going to ask you to just put your best guesses in the chat. So Rebecca, this is a test actually for you to see how much attention you were paying to what Rebecca said. The first icebreaker question is, how many times more often do men interrupt women than other men? So just pop your best guess in the chat there. Okay, Ellie, you guys, you've been paying attention. Thank you. So Anna says 3 times, Ruth says 3 times, Ellie says 3 times, Michelle says 3 times, Louise says 3 times. Yes, we've got it. Yes, okay. So yeah, the answer is almost 3 times. It's quite shocking, isn't it, when you hear that women, and that's why, you know, I have so many women coming to me, you know, talking about visibility, talking about making themselves heard in meetings. And if women are habitually, continually interrupted more frequently than men, you can see why it's such a challenge for women to make their voices heard in the workplace. Okay, so secondly, in a study of performance reviews, what percentage of women received negative feedback on their performance style, such as "you can sometimes be abrasive"? So what percentage of women received that kind of feedback? And then secondly, what percentage of men? So we're looking for 2 numbers here. So what percentage of women followed by what percentage of men? And again, you know, I know, like, just have a guess, right? Just have a guess, because we're not, unless we know this, we're probably not sure, but just have a guess. Okay, thanks, Ruth. So you say kind of 30-10. Good guess. Okay. Okay. Phyllis, 60. Mandy, a lot. Yeah. Michelle, 25-10. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Thank you. So the answer, 66% of women and 1% of men. Shocking, right? This one really got me. I was like, whoa. And I hold my hands up to my shame. very early on in my career, when I was performance managing somebody, I did say to her, I said, I did accuse her of being abrasive. I remember that very, very clearly. And I look back now and think, wow, I wonder how I could have handled that situation differently. Yeah, it is shocking, Michelle, isn't it? Okay, and then finally, what percentage of Black women have never had an interaction with a senior leader in their company? Have a guess. Yeah, Ruth, very close, 55, Phyllis 70, Ellie 90, Anna 60%. Yeah, you guys are definitely on the right lines there. Thank you. Laura, you said 70. Yeah, the answer is 59%. It's, again, a shocking statistic, isn't it? So that takes us that little icebreaker. It's just for a bit of fun, but also to get us thinking about the fact that this isn't just, you know, breaking the bias. It's not just something that we're not just a nice to have or something we're talking about. It's something very, very real. It has a very real impact on our lives and experiences, both in work and outside of work. So what we're going to do next is, because we know that you guys want to have a chance to discuss and to interact, we are going to move you in a second into breakout rooms. So Rebecca, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can introduce that discussion.
Thank you very much. I love those little icebreaker questions because it really gives us a deeper insight into our experiences. I remember when I was teaching and I was a bit more assertive because I needed to be, and a female came up to me and said to me, "You're scaring me," she said, "Get away from me, you're scaring me," out loud in front of all of the year 10s and year 11s, and I just froze. I think I was 25 at the time, so don't think I was ever really equipped to kind of know what to do and react to that. But that moment always sticks with me because it was the first time that I had spoken up, the first time that I'd challenged her on something. And to know that I was scary and I should, you know, move back. It was a real experience. So it's really interesting when we see statistics like that, and it's really interesting to talk and share this with other people as well. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms, and it's a lovely small group in here in the Zoom room. So it's really great for us to get to know each other, but also have these discussions. So we're going to give you three scenarios, and I've put the scenario booklet in the chat. So if you are over on Facebook or YouTube, you won't be able to access that until you come into the Zoom room, but you will see there's a PDF with the scenarios there. And there are three different scenarios to discuss. So take one at a time because we don't know how long we'll be in the breakout for. And one person, if you don't mind reading the scenario, that'd be great. If you can do it as a team, that'll be even better. And just take time to discuss the scenario before you read what to do and why it happens. So you'll see where it says what to do and why it happens. Try to hold back from reading that part. And if you have any questions, if you feel that the conversation, you may need some additional support, there is a help button, so an ask for help button, which just triggers Sarah and I to come into the breakouts. We will be popping into the breakouts as well, probably with our cameras off, just to kind of hear how the conversation is going. Remember our agreement, our group agreement that we stated at the very beginning. Make sure that we know that some situations may be difficult to hear. Stories should be anonymous, as I've told you about my story. I just said a female, and give people the benefit of the doubt. Listen, let's be heard, let's talk, let's discuss, and then we will bring you back into the main room with us to wrap up towards the end of that. So we have...
Yeah, so I've got the breakout room set up, Rebecca.
Okay.
We've got you in groups of 4, and we will, as I said, we will pop in and let you know. So just get in there and discuss as much as you have time for today. How long are we going to be in breakout rooms today? Phyllis, I think we've got kind of about 12, what did you say?
10 to 12 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to open them now. You'll see an invitation popping up on your screen.
And can I just double check as well that everyone has access to the booklet? Because if you don't have access to the booklet, then that might be it.
Yeah, good.
Everyone can see it. Okay, I'll pop in and make sure. And what we're going to do is, for those people that are still here, please stay here. You're still being streamed to YouTube and Facebook, so just bear with.
Is it okay if I just listen?
Of course it is.
Yeah, of course.
It's just
go into the breakout room if you want just to listen, and just if you just mute and put your camera off and just type in the chat.
No, I'm going to because I am multitasking and I shouldn't be, but I'm just as present as I can be.
All right, that's fine. Just letting you know we're still streaming, so we won't stream in the breakout. But
thanks so much.
We'll move you to there. No problem.
Thanks.
I'm going to move Leonora into room 2 or 3.
It doesn't matter either. They're 4 in each of them, so it's absolutely fine.
Let me move. Okay, room 2. There you go, Leonora. Room 2.
Okie dokie.
I am unable to stop the stream. Shall I stop it?
The live stream, I think so, yeah.
So for those people that are watching over on Facebook or YouTube, we're going to engage for the live stream, and we're going to make sure that the breakout room discussions are going just the way that we'd love it to go. If you want to join us, feel free to click on the link bit.ly/breaking the bias, and that will give you access to the Zoom room, which is where we are, and we will